The Atlanta Falcons, a team that is also looking for its own identity, but I think they're starting to trend in the right direction. But unlike the Carolina Panthers, I think they still have a long ways to go. So it looks to me like the Falcons are just maybe a shadow of what the Panthers are at the very moment. That doesn't mean the Falcons are necessarily bad. It just means that in the comparisons of two teams looking for their identities, they're less than the Carolina Panthers. But even with this in mind, are they still a team that is worth a fantasy pick or maybe even multiple picks? Let's find out. Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Team Review. In this series, we take a look at each and every 32 NFL franchises to see what they offer for fantasy football. Here we analyze the team's quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1 and 2, tight end, and starting kicker. Our goal is to analyze last season and see what they offer for this season, if they're worth drafting, and if so, when and where. Today, we take a look at the Atlanta Falcons. Desmond Ridder, Atlanta Falcons quarterback. So not a lot of people know who Ridder is because he did not go to a big Power 5 school, or at least it's not a Power 5 school just yet. It's gonna get there though. But yeah, not many people knew about Desmond Ridder, but the first time I ever watched Ridder play in full was when he took down my Notre Dame Fighting Irish a couple years ago. So I know about him all too well because of that, and so I have a little bit of knowledge going into this, but he didn't play a lot last year, and in fact he didn't play hardly at all, but for when he did play, he looked pretty good. So he played 4 games last year, and those 4 games he was 73 for 115, that's 63.5%, that's tied for 29th in the league. He had 708 passing yards, that's 45th, with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. 2 touchdowns is tied for 48th, and again, no touchdowns, that's tied for 1st. Even though if he were to play a lot more, he would definitely have more interceptions. And he has 38 total fantasy points, which is 49th. So he didn't play all too much, so I don't really see a lot for me to go off of, which makes me a little more skeptical to draft him. And yeah, I am very skeptical. He's not on my top 25 list, so he's somebody I would not draft. And you could draft him as a quarterback too, but I just personally wouldn't risk a pick for him. But free agency for quarterbacks is always a hot spot, so if he starts to go off, then go get him in free agency. Otherwise, don't waste a draft pick on him. Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons running back. Potentially the most hyped up running back coming out of college since Reggie Bush. Here, the Falcons with the 8th overall picked Bijan Robinson from Texas, and he was one heck of an athlete in his years at Texas. Let's take a look at his stats last season. With the Longhorns, he had 258 carries, 1,580 rushing yards, and 18 touchdowns. 19 receptions, 314 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns to go along with that. I don't know what that would be in fantasy numbers, particularly, I guess, now, but I'm pretty sure that would have made him running back 1. And he was, again, drafted 8th overall by Atlanta. I'm glad he went to Atlanta and nowhere else because the Falcons really need some spark to their offense, and I think he'll be a very nice spark. But at the same time, I don't want to rate him highly because he is a rookie. So this is what I did. He is somebody I would draft, but I have him as the 20th running back on my list, and I would most likely see him being picked in the mid rounds, like rounds 5 through 8. And that's because you don't want to really waste an early pick on a guy who hasn't proved it yet in the NFL. And with Bijan, running back 2 or running back 3, it really depends either or. You can take him in either way if you think he's going to be great. But I don't know. I give him a year to kind of rest in and settle into the NFL, and then we'll see from there. But then again, Ezekiel Elliott, They probably said the same thing for his first year, and he did pretty well. Same with Saquon Barkley, so who knows? Drake London, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver 1. So I didn't really have a lot to say about Drake London going into last year, but after this season, he did not play pretty bad. He played pretty good for a wide receiver. I think he was a wide receiver 2, or I think he got thrown into the wide receiver 1 after Calvin Ridley got suspended. And in this position, he actually played pretty well. He played 17 games, and in those 17 games, he had 72 receptions, that's tied for 33rd, 866 receiving yards, that's 30th, and 4 touchdowns, that's tied for 46th. He had 174 total fantasy points, that is 29th. People see him as somebody who's going to get better, and for the sake of Ridder and this full season ahead of him, that's something that London needs to do. But I do believe he will get better, and because of this, is he somebody I would draft? I'm pretty sure I would draft him. However, even I have him ranked lower than Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley, who we discussed in the Jaguars video. I have him at 29th, and I believe that he is a wide receiver 3 and 4 until further notice, because you have to see a full season with this new quarterback if he can continue to increase production. I wouldn't even mind if the yards didn't go up. Let the touchdowns go up, and then we're going to be talking wide receiver 2 sooner than we think. So yeah, with London going into his sophomore year, there's a lot of high hopes that he will have a better season, and I would see him being drafted somewhere in the mid to late rounds, like rounds 7 through 11. But that's kind of just where I see it. So yeah, solid pick. Go after him if you need to. Mac Hollins, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver 2. Now, again, similarly between Carolina and Atlanta, is the number 1 wide receiver is like a mid wide receiver, but is on the come up with their teams. But with Mac Hollins, I see him more in the DJ Chark territory, but just slightly better. So let's take a look at Hollins' stats from last season. With the Raiders last year, no, he did not play 3 games for the Raiders. It was 17 games. But in those 17 games, he had 57 receptions, which is tied for 60th. 690 receiving yards, that's 54th, and 4 touchdowns, that's tied for 46th. That gave him 147 total fantasy points, which is 46th in the entire league. So he had Derek Carr before, now he has Desmond Ridder. He needs to be somebody who has a step up in this wide receiver core for Atlanta if Ridder is going to see the progress he needs to make. But until then, I'm not ready to shoot the shot yet with him. I think he is a solid wide receiver, but as someone coming off free agency, he's not in my top 50. Therefore, he is somebody I would not draft. I just need to see a little bit more from him, and once I see more, then I'll be all good to go to start drafting him, but not yet. I need to see a little bit more with Ridder, or I need to see what he can do on this Falcons offense in year 1. And until then, I'm not going to pull the trigger. Kyle Pitts, Atlanta Falcons tight end. So a couple years ago in, I believe, the 2021 draft, the Falcons picked up Kyle Pitts early, like 4th overall pick as a tight end. So he had to have been one of the most hyped prospects coming out. But ever since then, he hasn't been doing much for me. And that's kind of disappointing, but at the same time, I don't know. Let's take a look at his stats from last season. He played 10 games last year, and in those 10 games, he had 28 receptions. That's tied for 152nd. He had 356 receiving yards. That's 132nd. And he had 2 touchdowns. That's tied for 111th. That only gave him 69 total fantasy points. That's 34th among all tight ends. So his stats are far outside of where he needs to be. But maybe with the new system, things change. He's constantly a high prospect. So maybe if he played all those games last year, we would see some different stats. But I have to believe that he is getting better. And because of that, I have him ranked 8th on my list. Therefore, he is somebody I would draft as a tight end 1 or 2. It's up to you which pick that you're going to make. But I am a little skeptical, and I'm going to give him this year to prove that he is the long-term security blanket option for Desmond Ridder, but he really needs to like put up more stats, like at least 600 yards, at least like 4 or 5 touchdowns. So going in that direction would be huge for him. Young Ho Koo, Atlanta Falcons kicker. Lastly, we have Young Ho Koo, one of my favorite players in the NFL. As far as kicking goes, he's one of the most exciting kickers in the league. And though a lot of people did not have high prospect for him last season, he still played really, really well. He played 17 games last year, and in those 17 games, he went 32 for 37 and made an attempted. That's 86.5%. That's tied for 17th. He was 94.3% from extra point percentage. That's tied for 26th. His long was 54, which is tied for 23rd, and he had 129 points. That gave him 143 total fantasy points, which was 5th in the entire league. So with Koo, you have to understand that, first of all, he becomes effective the more the offense gets in the field goal range. So really, you base a lot of these kickers on the team itself, except for when I did Brandon McManus. But he is somebody that I think will still put up really good points on like less than ideal offenses, which is where I see Atlanta at the moment. And because of this, he is somebody I would draft. I have him as the 5th best kicker behind McPherson, Butker, Carlson, and Tucker. And I believe that he is somebody who I would draft in the early rounds, somewhere in like rounds 8 through 11, I guess. And also, let me go back on an old pick, because I did the same thing I did with the Panthers video. With Kyle Pitts, I'd most likely see him being picked in rounds 4 through 6. Okay, got that. Back to Koo. Yeah, it's just his ability to make the long kicks. I know last year didn't have many long kicks, but if you have 143 fantasy points and contrary to 129 total points, it's probably because of range of kicks, which means he's probably had a lot of them. So he is somebody who I would draft in that regard. And that'll do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Be sure to start subscribing to my channel. I haven't been getting many subscribers since I started these videos, but I have been getting a decent amount of views, so that's great. Just if you are a returning viewer but you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so you can get notifications when my videos go up each and every single week. Not day, but week. The next video will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and before I go, I've been starting to work on the artwork to some future videos down in August that I am very excited to share with you guys when we get there. But until then, it's just anticipation. So be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And yeah, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy. Have a great day. Take care. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Wow. And that'll do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you... Oh my god. Hey.